Yo, what's good, everyone? We're back on a Thursday. And I was debating what this show should be about. Back and forth between rookie quarterbacks that we could draft, Jalen Milroe, Will Howard. Jerry Dulac was saying the Steelers might have interest in one of those day two guys. Or one of you guys brought up in the chat a couple of days ago, it might have even been last week. One of you guys brought up that I should go over to Steelers free agents for 2025 and talk about who I think we should re-sign and who I think we should let go. Just go down the list. And I figured since the Senior Bowl is this weekend, it's going to be Saturday, why not talk about Jalen Milroe, Kyle McCord, Will Howard, some of these quarterbacks after we see what they do at this, after we see what they do at the Senior Bowl. So we're talking free agents. But before we really dive into that, I want to talk a little bit more about yesterday's show. I got a follow-up for one of yesterday's topics. And you know how we mentioned Steelers and their coaching staff, typically they don't carry too many guys. Like usually they're below the league average for the amount of coaches they keep on their staff. And Big Ben had a comment saying like, yeah, they really should expand it out. I was at the Pro Bowl once and I saw the Texans have like 3 guys for one position. It was something crazy. He was like, the Steelers could definitely do more on their coaching staff. And then I brought up the Ravens just hiring Chuck Pagano to their secondary. He's going to be like their senior advisor to their secondary or something like that. And obviously Chuck Pagano, he's a name, former head coach with the Colts. He's worked his way up the coaching ranks, was a former defensive coordinator with the Ravens back in the day, has a ton of experience. So I went through it. I was like, I mean, is that really the issue for the Steelers? Like, do we need an extra coach? Do we need an extra coach on defense, an extra coach on offense? Is that really going to be the difference when we still have Tomlin there, when we still have a lot of the same pieces from these last 3 or 4 years in terms of coaching? Like, is it just going to be this one random guy from the outside that's going to change the world? And I was like, no, like it wouldn't hurt though. Don't get me wrong. Bringing in a Mike McCarthy to be like an offensive advisor, a Bobby Slowick to be like a pseudo QB coach or like backup play caller, that wouldn't hurt. Having Antonio Pierce on the defensive side of things, him or like a Gerard Mayo, a Mike Zimmer, like those are good options. I would be all for it. Trust me, I'm not against it. But I thought about it more. I thought about the whole Chuck Pagano move to the Ravens even more. And was like, they're really turning over every stone. Like they are really looking at last year and saying, this is where we failed. How can we improve it? What's just a little detail that we can clean up here? What's a different perspective? What's a fresh approach for us to get things right? So they went out and got Chuck Pagano. Like their secondary was awful last year. It was bad. I mean, it wasn't the worst in the league. At one point, it was the worst in the league. But that was their huge weakness. I'd say it was average to below average. And what they did, they went out and got a Chuck Pagano, a guy that not only is familiar with the Ravens, but was a defensive coordinator with the Ravens back in the day. Again, worked his way up to be a head coach for the Colts. But even before he was the defensive coordinator, was the Ravens secondary coach. So that's like, not only is he defensive minded, his calling card is secondary. So for them to bring him out of retirement to be a senior advisor to help coach up their secondary for 2025, it just made me think like, yeah, why aren't the Steelers doing something like that? Obviously, like I said, I'm not against it. I was questioning yesterday whether or not how much of a difference it would make. But either way, no, we should do stuff like that. Let's talk about the Steelers' offensive line. You don't think a Mike McCarthy being brought in as an offensive advisor could help that out? Now, again, that might be a little bit of a weird dynamic given that he's been a head coach for so long. Like that's pretty much the only thing he's known in terms of being in the NFL over the last like 20 years. Obviously, he was an offensive coordinator back in the day, but think of his tenure with the Packers, his tenure with the Cowboys. He's been a head coach for, 15, 16 years. A little different than Chuck Pagano having his stint with the Colts. But what about a Mike Munchak? I think that would be an apples-to-apples comparison to the Chuck Pagano pickup with the Ravens. Mike Munchak was a head coach for a stretch with the Titans, but he knows offensive line. Like as Chuck Pagano came up coaching the secondary, Mike Munchak not only was he a Hall of Fame offensive lineman himself, but he came up the ranks in coaching, knowing and teaching the offensive line and being damn good at it. And we got to see that firsthand whenever he coached up Pouncey, Villanueva, DeCastro. Like during the Killer B era, we had arguably the best offensive line in the league. We ended up letting him go. I think that coincided with Todd Haley not being around anymore. I can't remember why we let him go. I think it was a family thing, actually. He needed to move to get closer to his family, and he ended up coaching the Broncos for a little bit. But now he's available. Why can't we put Mike Munchak on the payroll? We don't have to fire Pat Myers, right? Open up a position for Mike Munchak, call him offensive line assistant, senior offensive line advisor. Why can't we do that? He said he wanted to get back into coaching. He wasn't opposed to it. Probably bored, got nothing to do. Why not come back? Why not? Why not for the Steelers? Go out of your way, try to get a Mike Munchak in here. Like that's just one example. Like we could go through the list of coaches, list of guys that are like chilling out there. I just saw Steve Wilkes got hired with the Jets to be their defensive coordinator. That's another example. Former head coach, good defensive coordinator, big time name. That's a guy maybe we could have brought in. Obviously, he got the best opportunity out there being a DC with the Jets. But say he doesn't take that job and he's chilling out there, why not bring a guy like him in to be senior defensive advisor? Something like that. Ravens looked at what their weakness was last year, what they struggled at, and said, "How can we improve this? Let's try to bring in a Chuck Pagano." Steelers maybe got to look at themselves and say, "That's not a bad approach. Maybe we could do something like that." Our offensive line stunk. It's kind of stunk for the last 2 or 3 years. Haven't been able to get the proper development out of our first round picks, out of some of these young guys that we're putting out there on the O line. Mike Munchak could probably help. I would like to think. Before we get into the 2025 Steelers free agents, Patrick Queen made a Pro Bowl. I don't know if you guys heard. I think now, how many Pro Bowlers did we got? Is that 8? I think it's a total of 8, and that's either second or third at this point out of the whole NFL. Another example of why the Pro Bowl was an absolute joke. Doesn't replicate reality, because Steelers definitely weren't one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the league last year. We're more like between 12 and 15. And that initially reflected how many Pro Bowlers did make it when the rosters were first announced. I think we only had 4. It was Minka, Boswell, TJ, and Cam. But now with the Steelers sitting at home on our couch and we got, 2 or 3 weeks of rest, and a lot of guys are sitting out due to injuries. Some guys are in the Super Bowl. There's some openings, and the Steelers are available. They could take it. And I do wonder, with all these Steeler guys being named alternates and getting the call, if a good portion of the voting took place when we were sitting at 10-3, we were top of the AFC North, and everything was firing on all cylinders. And then the voting closed right before our losing streak. Because some of these guys that are making it, I don't even think at the time, like a Russ, even like Patrick Queen. I'm surprised Dante Jackson. I don't know how many cornerbacks. There's 4 cornerbacks. I don't know if any of them sat out. Dante Jackson had like 4 or 5 picks. I know he had 5 picks for the season, but around that time when the voting was happening and when the voting closed, surprised he isn't getting buzz as an alternate or didn't get called up. But like you got to think, outside of the 4 that made it initially, I don't think we were necessarily talking about Patrick Queen, Russ, Isaac Seumalo getting snubbed like that. You know, I didn't feel like there was any other guys deserving from the Steelers at that point. They were having all right seasons, but we know with Patrick Queen, there were some missed tackles, there were some missed assignments, there was some disappointing play from him. He had some highlights here and there, but overall, I think we have a similar response to Patrick Queen making the Pro Bowl as Russ in a way. Although if you look at Patrick Queen's stats with him playing 17 games, once you get 5 years removed from this, once you get 6 years removed, whenever Patrick Queen's sitting in retirement, you're gonna look back and say, "Oh, he had 129 tackles, 5 QB hits, 6 tackles for loss, 7 pass deflections, couple forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, and he's got Pro Bowl next to his name." I guess he did have a pretty good season. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't terrible, but those of us that actually watched the full season, Patrick Queen, snap in, snap out, game in and game out, it wasn't Pro Bowl-esque. Much more to be desired. But hey, made a Pro Bowl. Made a Pro Bowl. More Steelers are making the Pro Bowl, but I have this same reaction as I did with Russ making it, Isaac Seumalo making it. Who cares, man? Who cares? Good for them, but it doesn't matter in terms of like the Pittsburgh Steelers and actually winning games and winning playoffs and trying to win Super Bowls. Has no bearing on that at all. All right, so let's get to these free agents. Who's in the chat? Who's stopping through here? We got D-Max. Dylan G's in the house. What's good, bro? Steel City 691. Ethan Leach was popping. All right, here's the list. Actually, we got a part 1 and a part 2. A lot of names. So we'll just go player by player. And I'm going to say, should they stay or should they go? Should we re-sign them or let them walk? There's about what? Yeah, this is probably like 30 names, huh? This is about 25, 30 names. So start with Mike Williams at the top of this list. Traded for him in the middle of the season from the Jets. Former multi-time 1,000-yard receiver. You know, I think he's got like 2 or 3 seasons of 1,000 yards back with the Chargers. From former top 10 pick. Extremely talented, 6'4", good outside receiver, good 50-50 ball guy. A lot of injuries, though. Didn't really fully live up to the hype with the Chargers. A lot of injuries throughout his career. Jets took a 1-year flyer on him. Talented. Like, we were even thinking about potentially signing him. Coming off of, I don't think it was like a serious. Was it? Yeah, I think it was an ACL, actually. I couldn't remember what injury it was. I didn't think it was full like Achilles, because we know that's the worst injury you could have. I think he's coming off the ACL with the Chargers, and Jets took a chance on him on this 1-year deal, and it really didn't work out. Him and Aaron Rodgers weren't seeing eye to eye. They didn't really connect. He didn't get the practice reps because he was still recovering from that ACL, and then when the regular season hit, wasn't up to speed on the playbook and how Rodgers wanted to do things, and became expendable in their offense, especially after they traded for Devontae Adams and brought him in. So we were hoping Mike Williams would fill the void of our wide receiver too, because that was something we were lacking throughout the first half of the season. The only problem was after we brought Mike Williams in, we were still lacking in the wide receiver 2 department. He really didn't pick up the slack like that. Although I'll say he did have some nice catches here and there. Obviously, the first one against the Commanders for the game-winning touchdown, but there was still some catches down the field where Russ would throw it up and Mike Williams would do some Pickens-esque type of catches along the sideline, some toe taps. So he had his moments, but really wasn't a reliable factor in our offense like we were hoping. Part of it was that due to the Steelers not playing him as much as he probably should have, at least in his first 4, 5, 6 games. It was something like, it was just weird where we were having Van Jefferson out there and Ben Skoranek out there more than Mike Williams. And you're just questioning, like, bro, why did we trade for Mike Williams if we're not going to use him? At least he would draw attention to the defense. At least he would take some of the attention off the middle of the field, and it would open things up for us, which when we did have him out there, I felt like the offense would open up and we would actually get the ball rolling more, when it would be like Pickens on the outside, Mike Williams on the other outside. But in terms of re-signing him going forward, no. Just no. I think, honestly, I'm going to jump the gun here. All these receivers on this list, I'm ready to move off of, outside of Ben Skoranek. And I'll talk a little bit why I think we should re-sign Ben Skoranek when I get to this second chart, because, yeah, he's right there. We just need a fresh slate at the receiver room. We got the guys that I think we can build around and be like the the main group of our receiving core going forward with Pickens. Even that's up for debate. But in terms of his play on the field, we got a Pickens. We got Roman Wilson, a guy we drafted in the 3rd round last year. And Calvin Austin, solid season. He's not like a bona fide wide receiver, too. He doesn't look like a guy that's going to be getting you 1,000 yards year in and year out, but had 600 yards, a guy that maybe could get you that, I think, on a pretty consistent basis, as long as he's on your team. 600 yards, has that element of speed that you can't teach. So if we could go with those 3 guys as like our 3 main pieces going into this offseason, and then sign a new receiver in free agency, draft at least 1 or 2 receivers, and then bring Ben Skoranek back, that's a good enough receiving core. And it kind of gets the stench of the 2024 wide receiver core out of here, at least a good part of it, because Mike Williams, Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, we're good, man. We don't need to go out of our way to bring any of those guys back. Now on to James Daniels. He's gone, and it's unfortunate because he was arguably our best offensive lineman before he got hurt. He was doing really good this year. PFF was grading him, I think, one of the top guards in the league for the first however many weeks before he went down. It was an Achilles, too. I was just talking about Achilles versus ACL. Achilles is like the worst injury. That's the hardest one to recover from. Even though we do have a lot of advancements in the science and the recovery, it's still the worst. It's still the toughest. You saw from Aaron Rodgers, you saw from Kirk Cousins, like they weren't fully back this year. Aaron Rodgers obviously picked it up as the weeks went on and finished pretty strong, but Kirk Cousins just, I don't know about him, man. I never really knew about him to begin with, but now you combine that Achilles injury. I don't know if he's going to be able to start again for the rest of his career. I think he might just be a backup. Some team might take a chance. I could see a team giving him one last-ditch effort for 2025. But Daniels, even though he's 28, he's coming off that Achilles. With him sitting out the majority of the season, it opened up the door for Mason McCormick, our 4th-round pick from last year. A rookie to step in and play really good. Mason McCormick was awesome for us. Outside of him getting banged up at the end of the season, like he stepped in and played very admirably in James Daniels' absence, to the point where, yeah, in year 2, we're probably going to get the same amount of production out of Mason McCormick as we would out of James Daniel, even in his prime before injury. So, yeah, we can't be bringing James Daniels back. I mean, if he wanted to come back as like a backup or like a depth piece, I'm all for it, but I think he could still get a starter's job somewhere else. So it's just not going to work. It's not. Too bad he doesn't play left tackle, because we could use him over on that side with the uncertainty going on there and Broderick Jones flipping positions. But no to James Daniel. Mason McCormick won the job over at the right guard spot. Unless we cut Isaac Seumalo and we want to bring back James Daniel, put him to right guard, move Mason McCormick back over to his original position at left guard, there's just too many moving pieces there. I think you're doing a lot for a guy coming off of Achilles injury. Whereas Isaac Seumalo just made a Pro Bowl. And even though we know the Pro Bowl was a joke, he's one of our most consistent offensive linemen. He's been probably our most consistent offensive lineman, point blank period, since we signed him. 2-3 years ago. Now, Frazier, one could argue he's had the best season out of any O lineman we've had over the last 3 seasons. But in terms of being here and putting out some quality play, Seumalo's, yeah, he's getting up there in age, so that's something to worry about. But we got him for one more year on the contract, so I think it would be smart to see that play out. So Mike Williams, James Daniels, Scotty Miller, and Van Jefferson, gone. I don't have any guys we're re-signing thus far. Dante Jackson, though, let's get to him. 5 picks on the year. Was injured. Was in and out of the lineup for a few games. But overall, provided some stability at that cornerback position we've been lacking. Whether you're going back to like Witherspoon, we were trying to replace him with Levi. Although I think Levi Wallace and Witherspoon were on the team at the same time. But whether you're talking about those guys trying to be like CB1, CB2, or James Pierre. hoping that he was going to develop into something. Us signing Patrick Peterson last year. We've been searching for someone, and obviously we drafted JPJ in the 2023 draft, and he's going to be a staple for us going forward, and has been a staple for us these last couple of years. But we know the hiccups with him and the penalties, and sometimes getting too physical out there, the up and the down play that we've seen from him. But he's been good. I think JPJ has been a net positive. But we've been looking for that other guy alongside JPJ, and Dante Jackson was that. Despite him, giving up some touchdowns here and there. I mean, 5 picks is 5 picks. And, it's not like he was getting burnt that much. Like, we're not talking about him in the same vein of, like, a Levi Wallace. If you're a cornerback, you're going to get beat here and there. And that's what I would say with Dante Jackson. It's not like he was getting cooked, massive separation. Guys were running wide open. It was like, no, it's kind of contested. He's in position, and A.J. Brown is just better than Dante Jackson. You got to tip your cap to the better player in that spot. So I would bring him back. I would, because he's only 29. He's been in the league for a minute. He came in the league young. I think this is like his 7th season already. He's 29. He's going to be turning 30. The thing that he still has is speed, so he's aging good. He's not the most physical corner, but we don't necessarily need him to be. Would you like that? Sure. But in terms of coverage, he still got it to a degree. I'm wanting to bring him back. The question is for how much. I don't think we should be paying him anything over 10. I think his market should be around 7 or 8. Because think about the time we brought Patrick Peterson here. He was coming off of a 5-pick season with the Vikings. Obviously, bigger name recognition with Pat P. More pedigree. And we signed him for a $7 million deal. $7 million per year. At the time, it was like 2 years for 14, and it wasn't too far off in terms of age when you compare him to Dante Jackson. I think he was around 31, 32 at the time. So that's what I'm looking at for Dante. Something under 10, 7, 8, 9 million, maybe 2-year deal, front load it with the guarantees, make it pretty much where you have an out after this next season. If you start to see him go backwards, I'm for it. I think he's a good player. I think he was solid for us. So I'm for bringing back Dante Jackson. I think that also makes cornerback one less thing you got to worry about this offseason in terms of outside free agency or even the draft. Justin Fields, I don't need to go over this. Yes, I'm bringing back Justin Fields. Absolutely. 1-year deal, 2-year deal, $10 million per year, $11 million per year, whatever it is. Give him the keys. Let him be the starter for 2025. See what he can do. Nate Herbig. He had a season-ending injury before the season even started, which forced Zach Frazier to be our starting center. Herbig wasn't, from what I remember, he wasn't playing bad in training camp. He wasn't playing bad. Did he even get any preseason snap? I think he got some preseason snap. He wasn't looking bad. And obviously his calling card is versatility. He can play center. He can play either guard position. I think maybe you try to bring him back just because of the last name. You try to keep that brotherly connection going. You keep that family connection going that the Steelers love oh so much. And he's solid depth. See where he's at off this injury. I can't even remember what injury it is. See where he's at. But yeah, bring him back for like a vet minimum. 1 year, $2 million, $1.5 million. I'm fine with that. Landon Roberts, on the cheap, sure. I got nothing wrong with it, but we got our top 2 at inside linebacker solidified with Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen. And then you're wondering, is Cole Holcomb going to be healthy? Because we still got 1 more year left with him. What are you doing with Mark Robinson? Could Mark Robinson take over the Landon Roberts role of being like that thumper, that run stopper? Because that's Mark Robinson's game. Like, you still got a draft to bring in another piece potentially at inside linebacker. I'm for bringing him back. I'm not stressing if we lose him, though. I'd bring him back on a 1 year, like $2 or $3 million deal. That gives you some security if Cole Holcomb ain't all the way back. Although we did just bring him off that PUP list or the IR list at the end of the season. So he's going to be good to go for 2025. The question is, how much rust is there, and is he anywhere close to being back to what he was in 2023? So, yeah, I think there's no problem with bringing back a Landon Roberts because you got your main two guys in Queen and Peyton Wilson. Even if you draft a guy for development, like I don't think any guy you're drafting at inside linebacker is going to be like seriously cracking the starting lineup or getting serious minutes anyway. So it's not like Roberts is taking up this roster spot or is, killing one of your draft picks development like that. Because you're not even going to draft an inside linebacker anyway in the first 4 rounds. I think that would just be stupid. Landon Roberts, yeah, bring him back. I'm cool with that. Najee Harris, I'm ready to move off of Najee. I'm ready. It's not even about the dollar amount. I think it's more about offensive philosophy and what we need out of the running back position going forward. I think we need more explosiveness. I'm tired of what this offense has looked like under Najee Harris and like the heavy personnel, some of the predictable play calling that happens when he's out there. I get the 1,000-yard seasons. It's nothing to sneeze at. Like it's something, but I think a lot of that's just due to him being available. Because if you look at the yards per carry, it's like 3.9. It's like at 4.0. Is that 1,000-yard year or the 4 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, is that more about Najee and like his skill set and how great of a running back he is? Or is it just the opportunity that he gets, the snaps that he gets, and the carries that he gets? Could we get that same exact production from a trio of running backs? It doesn't even have to be one running back to replace him. It could be 2 different running backs. If we gave those 250 carries that Najee Harris gets and gave them to either one running back that maybe we draft in the 3rd round or 2 running backs that we draft, say one in the 3rd round, one in the 6th or 7th, could we get that same production? I would say yes, because if you look at the efficiency and the yards per carry at 3.9 or 4 yards a carry, I think a lot of running backs can do that. If you give them 250, 260, 270 touches, that'll equal out to over 1,000 yards. I just think it's time to move on. I think it's just time to go in a different direction with this offense. If we're talking about changes, if we're talking about trying to change our approach a little bit, pair Justin Fields with a Jaylen Warren and a more dynamic, more explosive backfield, man. Let's see what we could do with that. You see the Commanders and what they're doing. Now, they do have a Brian Robinson, but I think Brian Robinson even. I'm not saying just go small scat backs like all 3 of them in our backfield. But like Brian Robinson, right? Commanders, they have an Austin Eckler. They have a Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson, to me, even though he's a bigger back, he runs a little bit smoother than Najee. He gives you a little bit more dynamic playmaking. I'm not saying just go completely like scat back, just all speed. Maybe that guy out of Iowa. I brought him up on the podcast today, or someone else brought him up on the podcast, but I confirmed I think it would be a good idea. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. He's not some slow back that, is just plodding out there. No, he's a big back, but then he's got the speed and can take stuff to the house. Like that's where I'm looking for, like just an all-around back that can get to the edge, that's faster than Najee, that can take it to the house. That's really it, man. And then you can add another piece as your third. I'm gonna keep bringing up Abanikanda. We should pick him up in free agency. But you could also draft a guy in the 6th or 7th round. I think that'd be a really good running back room. A Caleb Johnson, a Jaylen Warren, and either a Abanikanda, or you could draft like a Woody Marks out of USC in the 6th or 7th round. There's a bunch of good running backs in this draft. I'm ready to move off of Najee. Bring in some new running backs in here. Just bring in a different style. Try to switch it up. All right, I got to go through these other names pretty fast here, man. We got through the big names because obviously with me going with Justin Fields, I'm not bringing Russell Wilson back. Cam Sutton, I think it's time to move off of him, especially with the emergence of Beanie Bishop. Like you could rock with JPJ, Dante Jackson, Corey Trice, and Beanie Bishop as your like 4 main corners going into the offseason. You could still maybe draft another one. You could sign another 1 or 2. Cam Sutton, it looked like he lost it this year. He's not the same from what it looked like when he was in his prime here in Pittsburgh. He didn't play good, and he's getting up there in age. He's going to be 31. If you brought him back, it'd be for the cheap, but I think I'm good moving off him, especially with Beanie Bishop. I felt like our defense was better when Beanie Bishop was out there as opposed to when Cam Sutton came back from the suspension. We maybe should have stuck with Beanie Bishop for the whole season. Michael Pruitt, no. Just don't even give Arthur Smith the option of putting Michael Pruitt out there. Just move on. Kyle Allen, yeah, on the cheap. Nothing crazy. I want him to be my QB3, though. I think there's better QB2 options. As QB3, I'd be ecstatic with Kyle Allen, but we also just signed a Skylar Thompson. I would much rather have Kyle Allen than Skylar Thompson as our QB3. But I think either like bringing back a Mason. There's some other backups out there that are more intriguing than Kyle Allen, and even maybe drafting a guy in the 3rd or 4th round this year. If he came back for QB3, I'd be good with that. DeMonte Casey, I'm ready to move off of. We already got our main 2 safeties in Deshaun Elliott and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Casey just, he hasn't been the same since his first year here. And even that, like, he was out with injury a lot of it. But whenever he did play, he was making splash plays left and right. I think he took a big step back in 2023. And this year wasn't really relevant at all because of the emergence of Deshaun Elliott. So, I mean, we're going to have to bring in like a 3rd safety. I just don't think it should be Casey going forward. You can see he's 32 years old. Just not what he was. Yeah, just not what he was back when we first signed him in 2022. Because I'm seeing he had 26.5% of the snaps. I don't even remember any of them. Do you guys? I just think it was a forgettable season for DeMonte Casey. I think you could do better than him as your 3rd safety. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing Terrell Edmonds back, to be honest with you. He's younger, obviously familiar with the system. Seems like every time he's out there, he does something decent. He isn't screwing you up too much, especially for that 3rd safety rule. But I would get why some people would want a fresh start and not even want to consider going back to Edmonds either. All right, let's go through this part 2 real quick here. Tyler Medikevich. Yeah, bring him back. Good special teamer. Unfortunately for him, was injured this year, but wouldn't be the end of the world if we moved off because of his age being 33. All he's giving you is special teams. He's not giving you anything at the linebacker position. So if it was between him and a Mark Robinson or him and maybe a rookie linebacker and they could provide you some special teams, maybe you do go with the younger guy. Just because they can give you something on the actual defense as opposed to just special teams. But that special teams is Medikevich's calling card. Robinson or that other linebacker would have to at least give you 80% of what Medikevich can give you. Although Medikevich really didn't give us much this year because of the injury. So that's what I mean. I don't know if we'd be missing out too much on him. James Pierre. No, it's time to move on. I'd rather take a chance on, you could see here, CJ Henderson. I'd rather take a chance on him. Just someone out there in free agency that's got a little bit more upside that maybe can be developed. Because James Pierre, we know what he is at this point. His ceiling is CB4, CB5. I'd rather get someone whose floor is CB4, CB5 with potential of going up to CB2, CB3. Max Sharping, I don't even know who that is. So we can move off of him. Calvin Anderson, same. We can move off of him. Ben Skoranek. For special teams, I'm bringing him back for sure. He could be our Darius Hayward-Bay going forward. Like I think he really impressed me on special teams. And anytime he got the ball on offense, even though I felt like we had him on offense a little bit too much, we had too many snaps for him. But he gave it his all. He's a good blocking receiver. And when we passed it to him, he caught it. He made clutch plays. But special teams, man, you could see him as the gunner, always down the field, wreaking havoc on the return man, making tackles, making things chaotic. So I'm definitely bringing Skoranek back. Dan Moore Jr., no. It's time for Broderick Jones to move over to left tackle. It's time to see if that first-round investment pays off. It's make or break season for Broderick Jones. That's where we draft him to play. That's where we draft him to be. the franchise left tackle, or we drafted him to be the franchise left tackle. Get him over to the position he played all throughout Georgia, and see what happens. See what happens, because Dan Moore didn't play good enough down the stretch to consider re-signing him. Because before that, I think it was legit consideration. He was playing pretty good first half of the season. But with him taking a downturn and Broderick Jones not playing as bad as what he did in the first half of the season. Like, Broderick Jones didn't give up as many sacks. He still gave up some pressures, but it's like, bro, we spent a first-round pick on Broderick Jones. His rightful position is left tackle. We got to put him over there. We got to see what he can do. Because if not, you're paying Dan more money than Broderick to probably give you the same amount of production, probably give you the same amount of quality play. See what the younger guy can do. See what the guy that you spent a first round pick on can do. Like, that's it. It's a simple day. It's Broderick Jones time, make or break season. Isaiah Loudermilk, move off of Jeremiah Moon. Doesn't matter to me. Ryan McCollum. Actually, that would be a good idea to bring him back, because he got some, I think, some spot duty in there and didn't play terribly. Yeah, he went in for Zach Frazier and was all right. I'd bring Ryan McCollum back. I think he's a good depth guy on the O-line. Jaylen Warren for sure. And then Zion Gilbert, I don't even know who that is, so we can move off him. What do you guys think of my takes? What do you agree with? What do you disagree about? Manny Meeks says Najee can walk. One of you guys say you blame the play calling for Najee's mishaps. It's like the chicken or the egg. Like, is our play calling stagnant? Is our play calling predictable because Najee's out there? Or is Najee hurt by predictable play calling and conservative play calling? I lean more when Najee's out there, it's predictable, because I don't think defenses are viewing him as this dynamic pass catcher. I don't think it's a coincidence when Jaylen Warren is on the field, more dynamic stuff happens. The offense opens up a little bit more. Now, again, there is something to be said for Najee's durability, availability, to be able to take all them hits. But I think there's a fair amount of running backs that are out there, and particularly in this draft class, that can do that, but also provide more upside, provide more take it to the house ability than Najee. So I'm willing to take that risk, especially since we're going to keep a Jaylen Warren. You got a Jaylen Warren taking up 50% of the snaps this year coming up. Like, I think you keep that, like that sharehold, that 50% with Jaylen Warren, and then you give the other 50 to one of these new running backs or a couple of these new running backs coming in. So that mitigates the risk of moving off of Najee Harris, in my opinion. Ethan Leach, that's a good question. Why do you do so well with Ben in his rookie year? That's a really good question, actually. That's a good question. I mean, I think part of it was having Ben there, right? I think part of it was that, and like, he was the only running back. Because that's the thing. If you look at his yards per carry his rookie year, I think it was 3.9. Now, that line was bad. I do think his best year was his rookie year. When you look at it all together, it was trending like it was going to be this year in the middle of the season, where he had like 3 or 4 games in a row with 100 yards, but then didn't finish good. He definitely had his best season his rookie year. There's no doubt about it. Ben got him the ball a lot in the passing game, a lot of dump offs. So that helped his overall stats. Because that line was bad, dude. I mean, you know how I talk about Ben's final season and how bad that offensive line was. Because Najee he broke a lot of tackles. He made a lot of things work for himself when there wasn't anything there. So that even, I will admit, even that 3.9 yards per carry can be a little bit deceiving. That's a good question. I think probably having Ben there helped. Ben getting the play calls in the right spot, but that would really only happen in the second half, because that's another part of Ben's final season, aka the sabotage. If you know, you know. Canada did seem to have his hand on the offense for a good majority of these games. It wasn't a traditional 7 style offense. It would open up more, it would get better when we would be down in the fourth quarter and Ben would just say, "Screw these Canada play calls. I'm taking it over, and I'm gonna win us the game." That's a good question. Why was Najee better in his rookie year? Because the O-line was probably his worst O-line in his rookie year. Hands down. It got better for his second and third year, even though, like, his third year and this year, we could admit the O-line was subpar. It still wasn't as bad as Najee's rookie year. Ethan Leach says, "Wouldn't he have still been predictable?" That's what I mean. I guess I think Ben is probably the X factor there. Just having Ben there, like that's a Hall of Fame quarterback. Like no matter what, he's providing some sort of a better threat of passing the ball than what we've been dealing with over the last few years, right? I have to think on that more. That's a good question. But either way, like we weren't talking about moving off of Najee after his rookie year, right? We weren't saying like we were upset with Najee after his rookie year. It's been like I think the combination of all these years together, and it doesn't seem like he's gotten any better, and the offense has gotten more stale, predictable, and it doesn't seem like he's gotten any faster, or more dynamic. I think that's the thing. Him being on a rookie deal, that's different than re-signing him and investing in him and having him be one of the guys going into his late 20s. All right, last one here. Manny Meek says, "What do you think of bringing in Isaiah Simmons to replace Casey?" I'd be all for that. That'd be cool. I think that'd be real cool. As your third safety, he could obviously play the box linebacker. I think that's a good idea. Talented. I think that could bring a different little wrinkle to our defense for sure. All right, but I'm out of here, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Everyone have a safe weekend out there. I'll be back Tuesday, same time, 6:00, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 6:00. We'll definitely talk some of these rookie quarterbacks. Jalen Milroe, Steelers' interest in him, potentially a Will Howard, a Kyle McCord. People are bringing up. I don't know why people are bringing him up, but whatever. Jackson Dart. But yeah, everyone have a good, like I said, rest of the day. Have a good weekend. Stay safe out there. Stay chilling. Here we go, Steelers. Peace.